Welcome everybody this morning. For those of you that know me well, you know this is one of my favorite subjects. When I started at Pattern for Progress in September, Jonathan and the board asked me, what are you interested in working on? And I said, I'm interested in working on infrastructure. So this has been a great joy to focus on, and I'm pleased you're all here. I think we have some great panels lined up, the congressman, and this afternoon we're going to hear from Jim Levine at EFC. It's going to be a good program, but I want to mention this is really just a start of Pattern's work. We know that we haven't covered everything. We're not covering everything today. We have great partners in New York that we need to look to. The New York State Office of State Comptroller, fabulous information on capital budgeting, on finance, Environmental Facilities Corporation, again, a financing agent, DEC, and I could just rattle off agencies and names. I want to just make it clear that this is the beginning of a bunch of work that we're going to be doing, and we know that we can't stop here. We've heard a lot today about big infrastructure, right? The Tappan Zee Bridge, the New York Bridge, the Hoover Dam, the Erie Canal. Well, at Pattern, we're hearing from mayors and supervisors on a regular basis about the struggles of budgeting under the tax cap and about the inability to set aside money to even maintain current infrastructure, let alone build out new infrastructure for economic development. And when we talk about infrastructure there, we're talking about infrastructure, as our president Jonathan likes to say, with a little I. This is little I infrastructure: water, sewer, roads, bridges, broadband, cellular towers, not the huge $3-4 billion bridge, the small bridge, the one that got washed away in Irene. So I want to make it clear, we started to hear from the community, infrastructure is a big problem. We said, what are we going to do about this? Let's survey the region and find out what people are really thinking. So at Pattern, we began a survey in the late fall. You have a report on your table that's a summary of some of the work, but I'm going to talk you through some of the things that we found. And what we did is we tried to get to 100% response rate. I think we actually got 53% of all cities, towns, and villages in a 9-county region to respond to us, which is pretty darn good. You know, regular survey response, if you get 10%, you're lucky. But when a supervisor sees a note come across his or her desk about an infrastructure survey, they think, oh, that's for me. I have that problem. So we were able to get tremendous response rate, everything from the low of Rockland County at 29% to a high of all municipalities in Ulster County of 80%. So we really have a really good pool of folks talking to us about infrastructure. In designing our survey, I want to especially call out both Chazen and AKRF, who helped me. I am not an engineer. I don't know what water and sewer people are thinking. I don't know what highway and superintendents are thinking, but these engineering firms really helped us. They're members of our board. They helped us craft the survey and put it together. The other thing we didn't realize is that, we planned our event, we planned the release of our survey, we didn't know last week would be National Infrastructure Week, back in December when we picked our dates. How lucky are we that the president came to the town to promote our event and our issue, right? So we're very, very pleased to be following on the heels of National Infrastructure Week. And National Infrastructure Week's brought out some good solid research on infrastructure, saying things like Brookings came out last week and said, guess what? 12% of jobs in the United States directly tied to infrastructure. Building it, maintaining it, or directly using it, as in, for example, trucking transportation. So that is a lot of jobs in infrastructure, and we're starting to get good numbers on that. We know we have a lot of jobs in infrastructure in the region, and I was chatting before the panel got started today. For example, in Kingston, they've been building barges for Tappan Zee Bridge work for over a year. So you don't even realize how broad the infrastructure work actually stretches. All right, let's talk about infrastructure and what is the condition of it. We started looking at the national level. We know what it looks like when it doesn't work, right? That's the I-35 bridge collapse in Minnesota. Luckily, we have not had that on the Tappan Zee Bridge, but we have had bridge collapses in New York State. The D+ is, as the congressman mentioned, the American Society of Civil Engineers, they give it out a grade every year. What he didn't tell you is we actually went up from D to D+. Yay! It is really devastating to realize just where we rank in terms of the quality of our infrastructure, but also financing. We were talking about that this morning earlier, how we're putting less in than other developed countries, and that's a real issue. We're spending only 2.6% of our GDP, and really used to do much more. The American Society of Civil Engineers, fabulous thing called the National Infrastructure Report Card. You can look at it. It's fun, little widget online. But they look at bridge replacement costs. I'm just going to talk about bridges for a second here. New York State, what they do is they estimate the total cost of doing all your bridge repairs in every state. New York State is the highest. And even if you take $4 billion out for the Tappan Zee Bridge, we're still the third highest in the country in terms of costs for bridge repair that are needed today. So, and in the report that you have, we did show you a set of data that comes out every year that looks at, bridge inventory. The Hudson Valley has more functionally deficient and functionally obsolete and structurally deficient bridges than the rest of New York State and then the rest of the nation. So we probably have more work to do here in the Hudson Valley than others do. We started to look at spending. One of the reasons that we're in bad shape is we're really not spending the money. This chart here shows a 25% drop in all spending nationally. So it's not just federal government money. This is actually, the federal government is the blue part on the bottom, and state and local spending is the green part of the chart. So you can see there's been a big drop off in state and local spending in the last 10 years, 25% decline, and that is, a lot of that is federal money that flows through the states and localities. We decided we should look at the Hudson Valley and our municipalities and the data collected by the Office of State Comptroller. And what we found is that cities, towns, and villages are spending substantially less of their overall budget on infrastructure capital expenditures, that is, capital and equipment. On the O&M side, I'll tell you, on operations and maintenance, we're kind of stagnant. But in terms of CapEx, we are way down. For some reason, counties are not. We have to do a little bit more investigation. And our survey only covered towns, villages, and cities. We didn't cover counties, so maybe that's our next step. We need to look at the counties too, incorporate more of that. In any case, it's a problem, and what we've heard time and time again from local elected officials and people on their staff is that budgeting within the tax cap creates this very difficult problem where their capital expenditures are not exempt from the tax cap like school districts, and it's really, really pinching local government budgets. So what do we find? I know you can't really see this up here, and you don't need to look at it. What I want to tell you is that it's hard to get a good sense of the quality and condition of infrastructure. We asked people responding to the survey, how do you feel about your infrastructure, right? That's not very scientific. And we'll be refining over time, but this is a first step. What we found is that 5 to 7% of respondents in every category, roads, sewer, water, bridges, said they have some infrastructure at risk of imminent failure. That's not saying that 5% of our infrastructure is at risk of imminent failure, but in each of these categories there is a certain percentage, and 5 to 7% of municipalities are concerned about that. Water seems to be water infrastructure seemed to pop out as the most difficult area, where over 60% of respondents said that they need major work or at risk of imminent failure in water supply and distribution systems. And distribution systems in general, I want to say something about, we don't see them. You don't see them. They're not potholes. They can be underground, and we're talking about clay or a cast iron pipe that is 100 years old. I mean, the number of times that a supervisor or mayor typed out in the comments, our distribution system is 100 years old, was shocking. A lot of systems that are very, very aged in the valley. So we're going to have to be working on that. We asked folks if they were concerned about the ability to provide needed services in the future. 1 out of 5 respondents said they do not have enough supply on the water side. They do not feel they have enough supply on the water side. And 35% of respondents said the same for sewer. They do not feel they have sufficient capacity to meet future demand. Also, just to finish up with sort of the conditions and concerns, many people, respondents, over 60% in both categories, felt that they were concerned about the sustainability of their water and sewer systems. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody here in the room, but it's something that we want to start measuring, we want to start tracking, we want to make sure that we're, starting a dialogue on how we address these issues. All right, we asked about a few other things. We asked about broadband, we asked about cellular, we asked about natural gas. I want to tell you a story about natural gas. I was in charge of economic development in Ulster County for 5 years, and one of the roles of that job is to market properties. I have this property, this nightmare property in Ellenville called the Hydro Schrade Building. Half of it was hydro aluminum, half of it was Schrade, a 1 million square foot box, right? I had this fabulous company from our neighbor, New Jersey, always like to steal from them, who wanted to consider this building for their nut roasting operation. We go to the building, they like the building, which is a miracle right there. Then they ask me, so does it have gas? No gas. No gas, no dice, we're done. That building has no gas. That building will never have gas probably because running gas there would be hugely expensive. If you don't have broadband, if you don't have gas, if you don't have specific or sufficient electric capacity, you can't put those operations to build the things that Congressman Maloney is talking about building. So it's a very real issue. Also on this chart, which is tiny for you to see here, but I just want to note that in Westchester and Rockland counties, this was a surprise to me, over 42% of all mayors and supervisors expressed concern about cellular telephone access. We all know what it's like. You're on the thruway, right? You're in New York State on an interstate highway on a business call, which you shouldn't be doing, right? You're hands-free, and you lose service, right? Even in Rockland and Westchester, the leadership is concerned about losing service. Look, it's no surprise Sullivan County, 100% of the respondents are concerned about cellular. But to me, it was a shock that Rockland and Westchester are also concerned about it. So if we want to prepare for things like global foundries, and we're going to have a supervisor who is directly involved in that talking about it later on one of our panels, if we want to prepare for sort of the next generation of business, we have to build this infrastructure out. We need to know where it is. I was at a meeting with the New York, Connecticut Sustainable Communities Program down in White Plains, and we were chatting about infrastructure, and couldn't we get, urban planning and design master's students to do some things to map out for us where we could build. Oh yeah, get them some infrastructure maps. Oh, sorry, they're on paper hanging in the hallway. We don't have our infrastructure mapped in the Hudson Valley. We don't know where it is. Just because you're in a district doesn't mean you have pipes coming to your lot. So we have a lot of work to do to be able to tell people where they can develop. Oh, you want to put your business on this greenfield site? Let me check with the sewer operator to see if there's capacity. Happens all the time, all across the Hudson Valley. So we don't know our capacity. We don't have mapping done. Our infrastructure, we've not made sufficient investments. We're dropping off the investments over time. And that means that we are not putting money into maintaining what we've got. I'm going to show you this. All the highway people in the room are going to know this. The curve for highway pavement maintenance. My intern Victoria is here knows I spent a lot of time poring over pavement maintenance manuals. Why? Because in the road sector, and everybody who's in highway is probably going to pat themselves on the back now, we know a lot more about the value of maintaining our infrastructure. We have curves that demonstrate, if you spend $1 today, you're going to save $4 to $5 a few years out in general rehabilitation and reconstruction costs. Where is that curve for water and sewer? We don't have it. Why? It's not as simple. Your pipes in the ground have a lifespan of 75 years, maybe. Your sewer plant has all this mechanized mechanical stuff that all has different lifespans. But look, the highway people, they know, and they've been talking about this for a long time, that if they spend $1 now, they're going to spend $4 to $5 later. This chart actually may understate it. I've seen some more recent, because this is Cornell Local Roads from 2006. There's more recent data that says it could be 6 to 7, it could be 6 to 20, so dollars that you're saving later. So we need to incorporate the principles that we have in highway maintenance into other areas. What does that mean? It means that we do capital improvement planning. That is planning for what you are going to spend in the future. And it's not something that we're good at in the Hudson Valley. Our survey came back, 57% of municipalities do not have a capital improvement plan. They do not plan, they do not look at costs 5 years out, they can't necessarily tell you what they have to spend on infrastructure in the next 5 years. That's crazy, you could never run a business like that. And there's reasons why that happens, right? The election cycle contributes to it. I had one supervisor tell me, well, I tried to put together a capital improvement plan and I got hammered in the press. They said, Supervisor so-and-so calls for $25 million in infrastructure. He was looking at a 5 to 7 year plan of everything that was needed, but it was painted in a way that people just didn't understand. Just to go back to my point about roads, here is a little chart on what is in the plans that we have. So 43% of municipalities in the Valley have capital improvement plans. What's in those plans? Roads, bridges, and public buildings. What's not in those plans? Water supply, stormwater, and sewer. So we need to incorporate these principles into other types of infrastructure, not just in the road area. And what does this mean? It means asset management. If you talk to your engineers, your town engineers are going to start talking about asset management. What is that? That's where you inventory your infrastructure. You know what you've got. You do life cycle analysis. How long is it going to last? And then you plan for upgrading and maintaining it as you go. I want to say one other thing, and that is we gave people the ability to be anonymous when they responded to the survey. There is one county in our region where not a single municipality does capital improvement planning. I'm not going to say who they are because some of them asked to be anonymous, but we will be going back to the leadership there and saying, hey, you've got a problem here. And all the planning in the world can't prepare you for that, right? We know what that is. That's Route 47 after Hurricane Irene. That was a 4-foot culvert under the road. Blew out 35 feet down, 50 feet across. It's a bridge now. It's a steel deck bridge. And that's Ken Adams, the head of Empire State Development, and the head of OGS going, oh, they couldn't believe it. So all the planning in the world is not going to prepare you for that, right? You can maintain infrastructure all you want. We've got Sandy, we've got Irene, we've got Lee. New York Rising is starting to put some money into the Hudson Valley in terms of preparedness. We are going to see more events like this. The climate change scientists are telling us bigger rain events coming more frequently. Get ready for a bunch of these. Speaking of which, hazard mitigation planning is something that we asked all the municipalities about. And they are doing a better job at that. Than they were capital improvement planning. So we're happy to say that. It seems like the counties that got hit the worst in Irene sort of have the higher levels. All the counties have countywide hazard mitigation plans that the municipalities can sign on to, except Westchester, and they're working on theirs now. So, you know, that's a good thing. All right, I'm going to go to the president and what he said. And it was mentioned by Larry Walensky, our board chair at Pattern this morning, that first-class infrastructure attracts first-class jobs. We need to think differently about maintaining our infrastructure. We need to be planning for the future. We need to be regionalizing some of the management. You know, Dutchess County has a water wastewater authority. Orange County has a water authority. We need to start looking at putting multiple systems together so that we have more capital to put into planning and maintaining our infrastructure. It seems like bigger actually might be better in this particular case. And then we need to create resiliency and redundancy. So I wanted to mention that. Finally, I'm going to finish because I'm probably over my time already. There are a lot of next steps. I don't think Pattern is not done with this kind of work. If you have ideas or feedback, that's my contact information. I'm open to hearing what people have to say. There's questions I didn't ask in this survey that I regret right now. How many sewer plants in the Hudson Valley are at risk of imminent flooding during, you know, big rain events? A whole lot, but I can't give you a number. I wish I'd asked that. So that's going to continue. We're going to have additional questions, other thoughts as we move forward, and we welcome your comments on it. So I'm happy to take a question or two, then we'll break and then come back in at 10:15. I know I've already talked too long, so maybe 10:20 we'll come back in this room for our panel. Any questions? All right, I get off scot-free. Very good. Thank you.